All right. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome all you great coaches, specifically all you great youth coaches. Although, hey, we don't discriminate what level you're at. This is useful information for all levels, although our focus is youth baseball. And I say great coaches, and I mean that, not necessarily wins and losses, but you're great because you're trying to learn, you're here, you want to grow as a coach, and you want to improve. This is what all the good coaches do. That is what you're doing. You're here, you're trying to learn, and we're going to give it to you in a quick, concise format once a week here at the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass, the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Our goal here is to have zero or little fluff. We double edit this. My great editor, Sam, edits it. Then I go back to make sure that, and I've said this before, Sam does a great job of editing out the the you-knows, things like that, any dead pockets. And then I go back through to make sure that the message isn't redundant, that it's clear and concise is best. So because our time is finite and you all want to be a good to great coach in a quick a path as possible. So that's why you're here. And tell you what, last week before we cut off, I did throw a little tease out at the end of last week's episode that I would be covering a very unique play that has come up, and it's a very unique play. And there was a discussion on this Facebook group, coaching group, and it was this unique play. And it was, there was 22 comments about it at the time that I was reading it a week or so ago. And this is that, it's a unique play. And I just really, really wanted to talk about it here. Now, most of you are thinking, Coach Bo, unique play, something that doesn't happen very often. You're 127 episodes in, and you've been very consistent about talking about the big needle movers most of the time, and then being very cautious and careful to get into these plays that don't really affect much less a game, much a season. And that's why I threw it out last week, because it was a tease. I'm not going to cover this unique play with a man on third, less than 2 outs, drop third strike. Do you throw to first and get the out, let the runner score? Depends on the situation. Or do you not throw the ball to first and just let the guy have first? And hey, I saw that, and my first reaction was to read it. I was interested. I wanted to see the thoughts. I had my idea of what I would do, but I also wanted to see what everybody was saying. Then it hit me. I go, oh, this play is not going to affect the season. It really won't. And if it does, it will affect the season. It may affect one game, maybe just one game for one coach out of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. So it's not something that, in my opinion, unless you're sitting around having a beer, having a cup of coffee, or you're coaching advanced baseball, this isn't a play we really want to talk about. So I threw it out at the end of last week's episode that I was going to be talking about this very unique play, and we're going to break it down. Well, those of you that know me and have been here, I'm not going to talk about this play. And it's not that we don't get into the details and the nitty gritty. We do when it comes to the big needle movers, especially hitting approach, hitting plan, pitching delivery, practice design, discipline, team culture, these things that are make or break for your team. Having a good offense starts with hitting. Having a good defense starts with pitching. We talk about defensive play is big. And then the team culture, having fun, but having some discipline, having coachable, hardworking players that listen to you as a coach and respect you as a coach. Those are the big deals, not the man on third, less than 2 out, drop third strike. What's the correct play? I think these are good things if you're sitting around, you're talking with another coach, you got some extra time. You talk about this play. It's fun. But for all intents and purposes, when it comes to getting your team better, your players better, I wouldn't talk about this at all at the 11 and 12-year-old level. And I would save it until players are definitely more advanced, maybe varsity, but even just talking to your own son or daughter about this play off to the side. I wouldn't necessarily coach up the whole team. Definitely something you might want to bring up if you're coaching the college level or professional level. Yeah, of course, but you have a lot more practice time, and the base level of knowledge is so much higher. So you're already just adding on the little extra sprinkles and extra little pieces. You're adding on the frosting. We got to cook the cake. We got to mix the batter. We got to cook the base of the cake. We can't be worrying about putting the glitter and the frosting and the candles on right now. So we don't need to worry about these plays. I know it's enticing. Personally, I think it's more of an ego grab, an ego thing to see, who knows the game more. I think you got to be real careful. This is an ego trap, and this happens in baseball a lot, but you want to stick to the big needle movers first and foremost as youth baseball. The 80-20 principle, I've said it before. There's a reason this is 80-20 baseball. I was just reading another book the other day. I finished reading this really good book, and it literally brought up the 80-20. This isn't even a baseball book. This was more of a management book. It did have to do with managing people, that's why I picked it out, because coaching and managing and being a parent like I am, this is all kind of falls under the same umbrella of skills and whatnot, skill set. But I was reading this book, and it was talking about the 80-20 principle. We're big on the 80-20 principle. We do not ignore the details. In fact, we are big on the details when it comes to the big needle movers, the big things. We have a process that we stick to. Speaking of process, you hear a lot about trust the process. I'm a huge fan of the process. I'm a huge fan of having systems. Huge fan. In fact, we've talked about this many a times on the podcast here. I think as a coach, you should absolutely have default settings, essentially built in a system, autopilot. You should have your players on autopilot for certain things and a lot of things. If you can, there should be default systems. For example, if your team is up to bat and that third baseman is playing back, or they have some crazy shift on like you see in the major league levels these days. You don't really see it at youth level that much, or at all. But if you have that third baseman way back, they're not respecting the bunt, I would say it's automatic. I would have my players, I tell them it's automatic drag bunt, automatic. Doesn't matter if you're the home run bopper on the team or whatnot, you're automatically putting down that bunt if the third baseman is back past a certain point. And eventually the other teams are going to know you do that, and then they're going to come up, and then your batting average and your slugging percentage is going to go up because that third baseman is now sucked in. They have to respect it. Now you're hitting balls past them that normally wouldn't get past them. So that's why you're doing it. It's not so much to get bunt singles, but to draw on that third baseman, to maybe draw the first baseman a little, and then just inherently you're going to juice up your slugging and batting average, things like that. And I'm not a big batting average fan, but I throw it out there because it's a common discussion point and it's a common mindset frame of mind. It's an anchor. It's a good stat to anchor what everybody's kind of base knowledge is too. But so I would have that default setting of, there's different types of default settings we've talked about. So I'm big on systems. I'm big on automating things with kids. In other words, they know what to do. They should be able to run the throwing routine, the dynamic warm-up routine at the beginning of practice. That should be on autopilot. They should do it precise. They should do it exactly in the order that you've prescribed it as a coach. You've set it up with them as, and they should be able to do it. I'm big on that. I am big on having a process, but don't trust the process. Don't trust the process. Now, what do I mean by that? I do know that the phrase trust the process, hey, trust the process, work the process. There's definitely some merit to this, and that you don't just want to chase results. You want to work the process long enough to see if it's working or not. You want to trust it while you're out there instead of focusing on the scoreboard. The score takes care of itself, like the great book Bill Walsh wrote. So there definitely is some merit to staying focused on the process and the plan and the approach. I get it, but I'm going to throw a little twist into this, and it's not to disagree with that. I agree with that, but it's a little twist and a branching off to take this and kind of look and peel the layer of the onion a little bit more. And that is, we can't trust the process the entire season. We can't trust our process our entire coaching career. We can't just trust our process blindly. We need to test it. We need to test the results. We need to measure it. We need to be objective. We need to look at our results. We need to use the results to guide our process. Trust the results. Trust the results. The results you can trust because they are what they are. Are your players having fun? Do they want to come back and play? Are they looking forward to practice? Are they smiling? Are they having a good time? Do they hustle? Are they coachable? Do they follow the rules? Do they hustle out there? Do they support one another? Do they clean up the dugout after practice, after the game? Do they do things right? Are they disciplined? And then when it comes to the skill specific, the action between the chalk lines in terms of scoring runs, preventing runs, throwing strikes, having a good plan at the plate, getting results, having a good on-base percentage, a good slugging percentage, more often than not making the plays on defense. Are you winning games on the scoreboard? Are you winning games with your team and the team culture? We need to trust those results. And if those results aren't good, we need to trust them that the results are what the results are. Now, make sure your sample size, of course, is big enough to be useful. So the message that I'm sharing with you, and this is a coaching mistake that I think every coach makes at one point or another early on, and definitely something that we could all get better from, and that is blindly trusting their process. Trust the results and then use the results to guide your process, but don't pivot your process. Don't swerve with your process. Don't quit on your process too quickly. So there is definitely that trust the process. During the game, once a game starts, work your process. Trust your process. Have your hitters have their approach, their plan. Have the plan you have for your pitchers. Have their process, their routine. Have them stick to it. Have your pregame routine. Don't just shift it on game day or the day before game day. So that's the trust the process, work the process mindset, which which I wholeheartedly agree with. But I think there's another layer to this, and that is don't just trust your process blindly over an extended period of time without using the results, because the results are the truth. The results are the truth. The process is just our way, our vehicle of getting to better results. So the results are the truth. Our process isn't the truth. It's the steps, it's the routines, it's the system that we use to get to those desired results and goals that we want. But the results, the scoreboard doesn't lie. I remember an NFL coach, and most of you are my age that are listening to this. Some of you are a little bit younger, some of you a little older. And there was a coach, I think it was Dennis Green. Dennis Green, he said, I don't quite recall what the interviewer said in this press, I think it was a post-game press conference. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is a good one. It's a well-known, it's a very famous interview. And he's like, you are what your record says you are. And I just remember hearing that and like it hit home. This was like 20 years ago or 25 years ago when he said this. And it was like, you are what your record says you are. Because I do remember a lot of coaches would be like, oh, we're better than our record says we are. You know, our record doesn't really reflect how good a team this is. He's just like, no, your record is what you are. You are what your record is. And what he's saying is he's trusting the results. He's trusting those results. Work your plan during practice, during the game, before the game. Yes. Do you want to stick with it so you can see if it really works? Yes. But to what point do you need to just say, hey, what I really trust are the results. The results are what is being honest. My process might not be the best way. So I think this is something I just wanted to add to this, because I do love the work the process, trust the process phrase that we hear in life. But I wanted to add something that I think is a huge competitive advantage, not just in baseball, but in life and with our friendships, with our families, and definitely in business. The results are where it's at. And so I was talking to my wife, and she's kind of a product manager and does some other things. She's really, really good at what she does. And we were talking about something, and I said, well, something about a product they were going to test. And they just said, well, we're going to test it and then just see what the results are. And I thought, oh, I was like, well, why don't you try this or that? They're like, no, we're just going to find out what the results are. Like, we're not going to get caught up in the process. We're going to let the results dictate whether this is a product that we want to move forward with or not. But the customers say yes or no, they like it. You hear about this in business all the time. They build this product. The product sounds really cool. In fact, it may be a really great product. It may just be 20 years too early or 10 years too early. The product market fit isn't quite there yet. Not because of the product being useless, but it's just the market, that people aren't ready for it or whatnot. But then you hear these stories all the time. It's like this great. They love the product. They loved it. Oh, we loved this thing. We designed this service we had set up, but then it was crickets when they came to launch it. In fact, when I first started 80/20 Baseball, I tried to do a little bit of a membership. It was I started off by, all right, what I'm going to do is like a membership, kind of a consulting membership, help coaches. But then I realized it hit me after a little while. Coaches were giving me feedback. They're like, hey, we really don't need a year-round membership necessarily. Some coaches were in, but the bulk of coaches are coaching seasonally. So they wanted some more a la carte stuff. They wanted a webinar. They wanted some practice plans. They wanted a rules plan. They wanted that sort of thing. It was more, I need it during the season. I don't want to be tied into this year-long membership because I'm only coaching baseball. So I thought it was a good idea when I thought of it, but it wasn't, because the results, if I trusted my process, I'd still be sitting here with a membership program that's not suiting and fitting as many needs in the coaching community as should be. So, I'm just sharing you some things that I've learned along the way. And a lot of you know exactly in your industries, in your businesses, in your lives, exactly what I'm talking about here. So we want to work the process, trust the process. But when you're out there coaching, let the results, there's red flags, the initial red flags. And you're like, okay, so maybe this isn't working, or maybe this is working. It's kind of that, it sounds good in the ivory tower. You're hearing this a lot more. Like, it sounds good in theory. It sounds good in theory, but in the trenches, it doesn't work. It sounds good in theory. Well, the theory is kind of the process, the plan. The plan sounds good, but the results suck. So thus the plan sucks. And that's really how you kind of got to look at it to an extent. I get it. There's variables and caveats to that, and outlier situations, of course. Okay, let's get into the last part of this episode. Episode 127. Coaches, never, ever, ever, ever allow your players to talk to the other team at all unless it's something positive or they're offering some help. Never should they say anything that's even kidding or joking or chirping at the other team, taunting the other team. This is an absolute zero tolerance, and it starts not by us having to babysit it or monitor or put a cease to the other team doing it. It starts by us taking care of cleaning our own house and ensure that we have our house in order. Players should not talk to the other team unless it's a friendly discussion. Maybe they know the other player, right? That's a friend of theirs. That's cool, of course. Or it's a compliment to them. Hey, man, a good hit or whatever. Or, hey, you did great today. I'm not saying we shouldn't talk to the other team. The players should be allowed to talk to the other team, but it should never be in a chirping way, a taunting way, a teasing way, a belittling way. It should never be to rattle them while they're out on the mound pitching. I'm not a fan of this at all. Zero. Now, I'm definitely not against teammates razzing each other from time to time, and because having thick skin is good. Having thick skin is good. I just don't like it when it's in a game situation, it's the other team. I think if it's something within your team culture, it's a fine line you got to walk here, but if they're razzing each other a little bit, and having thick skin and thickening our kids' skin is not a bad thing. In fact, I think we need a lot more of it in society, and why not start with baseball? But I do think that it should start within a positive team culture, a culture that can trust and respect each other, and then you can get on each other. I have a good group of friends that I grew up with back since grade school and definitely into middle school and high school and since then, and we stay in contact. We get together and it's a close group. All things considered, us kind of moving, having our own families, and now we're all into our 40s. But I'll tell you what, it was a no holds barred group when we were younger in terms of just razzing and, you get heckled, we used to be sitting there at the lunch table and, you used to getting heckled by your own buddy. Your own boy would be sitting there and would be shooting on what they call shooting on each other. That was just par for the course. That was just status quo. That was just the expectation. We'd hammer each other, and you had to be on your toes and you had to be ready to come back. You had to have thick skin. You couldn't just fold like a cheap pup tent. You don't want that from your players. You don't want that from yourself. You don't want that inability to have some thick skin. And I'll tell you what, growing up, that was something that was a blessing, because when I got to college, I went to Long Beach State, and man, oh man, I got there as a freshman, and there was some seniors and juniors, and they were all about, they didn't haze us. It wasn't one of those crazy hazing stories, but it was all about, the verbal jabs and left hooks were coming all the time. They'd be joking, shooting on you, kind of messing with you, saying this, saying that, and the other trying to ruffle your feathers, but it didn't faze me at all, because that's all I kind of knew from this group. Now, it wasn't anything I planned out. It was just kind of the path that life took me on. But I think a lot of our kids are not there yet, and I think we can thicken their skin. I think we can do that by certain things. It's a little harder to do that than teaching them to hustle more, swing at better pitches. It's definitely a longer term process. But I don't like the chirping at the other team at all. I don't like the talking to the other team at all to get under their skin. I don't like that. I highly recommend you put a cease to that. You put a stop to that immediately as a coach. And that should be something that you're firm. You hear coaches say, hey, stay with our team, stay with our team. I wouldn't just say stay with our team. I would have a very clear expectation, a very clear standard or rule set forth. I'm going to give you one warning and then you're out of the game. Or I'm going to give you one warning and then you're going to be sitting in the bleachers, or you're going to be asked to leave the field. Now, I know some of you might be thinking this is a little bit strict, but there's just no place for kids to be sitting there taunting or chirping at the other team. There's just too much to focus on within ourselves, on our own team, on our own game, on our own skills. There's so much to get better at that. If we're doing that, we're definitely not getting better. We're not focusing our energy and our improvement inward. And so I highly recommend that this be a very clear standard with your team. You are not to yell out at the other pitcher. You're not to taunt or try to distract with some crazy chant that's directed at the other team's hitter or whatever. You know what I mean? Just it'll look different times and it can unfold a little different, but we should have a zero tolerance policy for this. I'm not against them talking to the other team, of course, if they're friends or they're saying what's up or they giving props to their team. Obviously they shouldn't be like going and shaking everybody's hand on the other team as they cross home plate, scoring a run and, doing that sort of thing. But they should definitely show good sportsmanship. I think this is a zero tolerance policy, and it starts with our own teams, and we be the example, be the change that we want to see in the baseball community. Let's start with our teams. So no chirping, no talking to the other teams, no talking to the umpires. Players should not talk to the umpires unless it's an emergency situation, urgent situation, a safety issue. I would have a zero tolerance policy for players questioning umpires, talking to umpires, definitely not yelling at the umpire. Players should stay with their team as best as possible. There may be times where where they have to interact with the umpire, and that's fine. I'm not saying it should be a black or white issue, but I definitely have this strong thought on us as coaches, my strong belief that we as coaches need to just say, hey, don't chirp at the other. I know I was reading a couple times, I was talking to some coaches in a little group that I'm part of, and some of them were talking about this issue that was coming up. They played some teams that were just chirping and doing this thing and chirping at the pitcher and, trying to throw them out of the rhythm. Now, if the other team is doing that, you got to teach your player. We got to teach our players to have thick skin, tune it out, and give them something positive to focus on. Because yeah, they do need to develop some thick skin because life is going to do that in a way to them. They can't just fold up that easily. They can't just hit the quit button that easily. Okay. It's like they can't just reach over and hit the reset button on the video game console because it just didn't work out or somebody said something to them and I'm going to get it right. We got to teach our players to have thick skin, but I don't think our players, our team should be the reason that the other team develops a thicker skin. You see what I mean? So I definitely know that we can't control the other teams that much, but we can't control our own. I would teach our players to have the better sportsmanship and model that positive behavior that we want to see throughout the league, throughout the baseball community. So to sum it up, zero tolerance. This is my recommendation, at least zero tolerance on chirping to the other team or talking at all in a taunting way. Just zero tolerance unless you can tell that they know each other, they're friends, or one of your players is giving some praise or props to the other team or checking on them if they're injured. Outside of those things right there, the focus should not be on the other team. And that's really the big message is if they're focused on the other team, they're not focused on themselves. And if they're not focused on their game and within the team, that inherently is going to stall their growth, their improvement. It's going to slow it down greatly. It's going to, in a way, stop it because they're not looking at how they can get better. They're not looking for that little edge. They're not focusing on the adjustment improvement that they're making for their next at bat or for the next inning or getting themselves physically prepared for the next inning or whatnot or for the game. But instead, their mind is on the other team. And it looks silly. It looks buffoonish. And it just looks bad. I think it looks immature to taunt and chirp at the other team. I think it looks terrible. The optics are not good, but it also, you're really going to stall the growth of your team if you allow them to stay focused on the other team like this. And that's really the only time that players really stay focused on their team for a longer period of time when they're trying to rattle the other pitcher. They're really kind of into it for an extended period of time. I mean, they'll shoot them some praise or they'll give them a fist bump if they did something well, or they'll check on them if it's an injury, but those things really happen quick. But when it comes to the rattling, the chirping, the taunting, that can be an extended period of time. That could be a whole inning too. Think about all that time that they could be working on something to get better. They could be behind the backstop, behind the dugout, maybe hitting off a tee, working on something. Maybe they could be getting their arm loose, ready to go out there and pitch the next inning. They could be talking with a coach about adjusting or improving their hitting approach the next time up. There's so many things to get better at, and the season is so short. So I wouldn't have them spending much time focused on the other team. And then on top of that, it just looks immature. It looks stupid. It looks like a coach has no control. It looks like the inmates are running the asylum. And I say that with all due respect. I've seen teams that have done this, and I've actually been an assistant coach on a team a long time ago that did this, and I just felt like the other teams looking at it, it's just the optics are bad. It shouldn't be a team sitting in the dugout, sitting all the same perfectly, not talking, looking straight forward. No, it shouldn't be this totalitarian type of coaching expectation, but there should just definitely be some lines they don't cross. Taunting, chirping, that sort of thing at the other team. Let's just cut that out in youth baseball. It's just not good. And kids just aren't really good at it either. They're not funny, and it's never good. It's just annoying. At best, it's semi-annoying, partially annoying at worst. It just ruins the vibe of the game. So let's cut that out, and it starts with our own team. Set forth that zero tolerance policy on that. Say, we don't do this at all, ever. These are the times you can talk to the umpire or the other team. Define those 1, 2, 3 times, those incidents, those events that might happen where that is warranted, and then clearly lay out exactly what they're not allowed to do. Chirping, yelling, taunting, screaming, talking rudely, whatever. I mean, all that. Even if it's just neutral, just chirping and just trying to chant at the other team's pitcher. Like, no, just cut that out. It looks really bad. It's not a good look for your team or you as a coach. And it really hurts the growth of your team inherently. All right, let's tie it off there. 8020baseball.com. Go over to 8020baseball.com. I got about a dozen videos, coaching videos over there, another dozen articles. 8020 Baseball's got the webinars. It's got the team rules plan. Check in with that, bookmark that. And for the podcast, we are going to be doing some really good interviews, helpful interviews for youth baseball coaches, for you coaches that are listening, all you great coaches. Typically in the past, we've lined up the interviews as the season starts to wind down, as we roll into early summer. And as those of you know that have been with us and been with me for a long time here, you know those interviews. I try really hard to cut out the interview fluff, the back and forth, the backstory too much on the coaches, although it is important to hear that. But it's really about getting tips and strategies from successful coaches that have been in the trenches and really trying to filter it for youth baseball coaches, not dummy it down, filter it. It can be just as advanced. It's just about how wide do we want to get with youth baseball. So those interviews those are going to roll out here in June and July, and I'm excited. I think they're going to be very helpful to get us going into the coaching off season or the next season, where you can really start to build and formulate beforehand better systems, better routines, better coaching process, etc. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited. I got a list of some great coaches here that are on the lineup card for interviews. Till then, take care of yourselves, your health, your family, your friends. Take care of the baseball coaching community. Take care of the baseball community by doing what you're doing, learning, taking this information that you are absorbing, that you're hearing now, and going out there and using it. Trust the results more than the process, but go out there, put these in, test it out. And I look forward to being back here with you next Tuesday when the weekly episode comes out. Until then, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.